What does it take for one person to change the course of history for thousands? This is the story of Judge Sooknanan, who faced an impossible choice and chose conscience over policy. Planes waited on the tarmac, ready to deport over 2,000 children to an uncertain future. In that moment, Judge Sooknanan saw not just case numbers, but the faces of children whose lives hung in the balance. Her decision was more than a legal ruling. It was a declaration that the welfare of a child must come first. She pressed pause on a fast-moving train of deportation, forcing everyone to reconsider what was truly at stake. The weight of her decision was immense, but she carried it with purpose. Her actions sent ripples of hope across the country, reaching anxious parents thousands of miles away. Today, we're breaking down the dramatic ruling that blocked the deportation of hundreds of Guatemalan children, the legal battles surrounding it, and what it could mean for America's immigration future. On Sunday, August 31st, District Court Judge Sooknanan issued an emergency order that halted the deportation of unaccompanied Guatemalan minors. Advocacy groups had rushed to court, warning that dozens of children were already being placed on flights bound for Guatemala. Initially, the judge blocked the deportation of just 10 children between the ages of 10 and 17. But during an emergency hearing later that day, she expanded her order to cover more than 600 unaccompanied minors currently in U.S. custody. The temporary restraining order is set to last 14 days while the case proceeds. Her decision literally stopped planes on the runway. Children were removed from flights, and shelters were instructed to hold them while the legal battle unfolds. Lawyers for the children argued that the deportations would violate federal child protection statutes, deny due process, and put minors at risk of abuse or persecution if sent back to Guatemala. They pointed out that many of these children had pending immigration cases and that U.S. law specifically grants protections to minors who arrive alone at the border. The Trump administration pushed back. Deputy Assistant Attorney General Drew Ensign told the court that the flights weren't deportations at all, but family reunifications, requested by Guatemala and by relatives of the children. He claimed that one flight may have briefly departed, but had returned, and that all planes were on the ground. Advocacy groups strongly disputed this, insisting that not all parents had even consented to repatriation. They accused the administration of trying to quietly carry out mass deportations under the guise of reunification. To understand why this ruling matters, we have to look back at Trump's history with immigration. From the earliest days of his presidency, immigration enforcement was at the center of his agenda. His administration issued the so-called Muslim travel ban, pushed for the construction of a border wall, and ended programs like DACA protections for Dreamers. In 2018, the controversial zero-tolerance policy led to family separations at the border, sparking global outrage. During the pandemic, the administration used a public health order known as Title 42 to rapidly expel migrants without letting them seek asylum. And earlier this summer, the Supreme Court allowed removals to third countries without migrants even presenting asylum claims. Against that backdrop, Judge Sooknanan's ruling becomes part of a bigger story. Federal courts repeatedly stepping in to question or limit how far executive power can go when it comes to deportation and asylum. The ruling immediately drew strong reactions. Immigration advocates praised the intervention, calling it a life-saving decision. The National Immigration Law Center described the attempted deportations as a grave injustice carried out in the dead of night on a holiday weekend. On the other side, White House advisor Stephen Miller lashed out at the judge, claiming she had prevented minors from reuniting with their families in Guatemala. The administration framed the decision as a roadblock to humanitarian reunification, but critics said it was really about accelerating deportations without due process. In Guatemala City, dozens of parents had gathered at a reception center, expecting to be reunited with their children. Instead, they were informed of the court's order. Some expressed frustration, while others voiced relief, fearing their children would be sent back into unsafe conditions without proper legal review. Guatemalan President Bernardo Arévalo criticized the ruling and pledged to continue negotiating with Washington to repatriate minors under what he described as a pilot program. The incident also underscores how migration policy affects international relations. Guatemala, along with Honduras and El Salvador, has long faced pressure from Washington to help manage migration flows. Agreements under past administrations, including safe third country arrangements, aim to send asylum seekers back to Central America. This ruling complicates those efforts and raises questions about future cooperation. This case also shined a spotlight on Judge Sooknanan herself, who has only recently joined the federal bench. Born in Trinidad and Tobago, she built a distinguished legal career before becoming a judge in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia in January 2025. She graduated summa cum laude from St. Francis College, earned an MBA with distinction from Hofstra, and later graduated at the top of her class from Brooklyn Law School. Her career included clerkships with Judge Eric Vitaliano, Judge Guido Calabresi, and even Justice Sonia Sotomayor on the U.S. Supreme Court. Judge Sooknanan later served in the Justice Department's Civil Division and Civil Rights Division before becoming a partner at Jones Day. Known for her rigorous legal mind and commitment to pro bono work, she has quickly made an impact with this high-profile ruling. Her journey is a reminder that America's strength lies in its diversity and its commitment to justice. This ruling doesn't resolve the broader issue. It only temporarily halts deportations while the case proceeds. But it underscores how critical federal courts are in reviewing executive branch actions, especially in immigration. Legal experts argue that the administration bypassed both U.S. child protection statutes and international obligations by attempting these deportations. Judge Sooknanan's order forces the government to pause, at least temporarily, and ensure that the rights of unaccompanied minors are respected. Currently, roughly 2,000 Guatemalan children remain in federal shelters rather than being deported without a full hearing. Whether they will be allowed to stay or eventually face removal will depend on how the courts ultimately rule. This case is more than just about Guatemalan children. It's about the balance of power between the executive branch and the judiciary. Trump's immigration policies have consistently tested the limits of executive authority, from travel bans to asylum restrictions to mass deportations. Federal courts, however, have repeatedly stepped in to reaffirm due process rights, especially when vulnerable populations are at stake. This back and forth is part of a larger debate in America. How far should immigration enforcement go, and what protections must always remain in place? So here we are. Hundreds of Guatemalan children spared deportation at the last minute thanks to a federal judge's intervention. The case is still unfolding, but it represents a defining moment in the struggle between immigration enforcement and due process. What happens next could shape U.S. immigration policy for years to come. Will the courts continue to push back against the administration's hardline approach, or will executive power prevail? If you found this breakdown informative, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with others who want to understand what's happening, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into law, policy, and the stories shaping America. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.